The Story Grows. I'm Brad Patton. Today we welcome Randall Taylor of Amulets to the podcast. Amulets released their new EP, Reminders, last Friday with Pelagic Records. Randall talks about learning to play guitar, discovering tape loops and experimenting with sound, the creative process and ambiguity with Amulets, recreating soundscapes in a live setting, and a lot more. Amulets is a different vibe than the normal As the Story Grows guest, but I'm a huge fan of ambient music. The new Amulets EP is incredible, as is all of Randall's work, and I'm excited to share this interview and music with everyone who listens. Thanks so much for checking out this episode of As the Story Grows. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, welcome. You can find links in our show notes or at asthestorygrows.com for our mailing list, our Discord server, and our Patreon page. Over on the mailing list, I just shared photos from the Converge Poison the Well tour, so make sure you check those out. Enjoy today's conversation with Randall Taylor of Amulets. Oh, it's all good. You would not be the first person.
Yeah, I think this shit happens all the time, right?
Yeah, this is coming, right? Technology is your friend.
It's just part of it. Hello.
Yeah. Welcome. Glad to have you here.
Ryan, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Where are you out? Portland? Is that right?
Oh, yeah, Portland, Oregon. Yep.
Nice. Is that where you grew up?
No. I grew up in upstate New York, but so I've been living here for like the last 8 years now.
Okay. That's cool. That's cool. What brought you to Portland? Just
I've been making my way over. I used to live in Austin too, and I don't know, just like I've just been going to cool city, I guess, and you know, and I just a lot of art, music brought me here, so but it's been a good place to land.
Nice.
Sure.
Nice. Where in upstate New York did you grow up?
It's like Syracuse area.
Okay, cool. That's cool. What was growing up like?
Oh, it was very cold. I grew up in a very like rural part of, it's like a little bit south of Syracuse. Okay. And it was just a town called Tully, and it was rural and like small and blizzardy. And yeah, it was good for what it was. It like, you know, like, but yeah, it was just a small town living. Yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
What first connects you to music?
I started playing clarinet at like when I was in 4th grade, and I didn't really like it. I wasn't very good at it. But I was very interested in guitar and learning guitar. And so I think I transitioned to guitar at like 6th grade. I started like my dad's friend like let us borrow a guitar, and I remember just learning, like teaching myself how to play guitar, and became very obsessed.
Nice.
And then I formed several bands in high school, and I was in a cover band for a long time. I was like in a ska band for a second, you know, like just did a lot of bands, and just kept going. And so yeah, it was all just to like learn guitar and learn covers and, you know, like play like Green Day songs and stuff.
Nice. I have a very similar story where I like played trombone in 4th and 5th grade, but was terrible at it. And then you discover punk rock, and it's like I'd rather play guitar.
Yeah, totally. You're like, I'd rather learn like power chords and like distortion, and then I'm going to have this be the rest of my life.
Right. Sure. Unfortunately, I learned power chords, and I was like, I can play the Green Day songs. I don't need anything else, and then just kneecapped all my guitar playing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a lot of people. I think that's just like, you know, you especially with guitar, you can learn enough to be like, well, I could like do stuff, but like beyond that, it takes a lot more effort to be like, well, do I want to develop more as a guitar player, or do I just want to like play what's fun and what's what's a more immediate And I think that even then, like I've learned a bunch of scales. I've learned music theory over the years and stuff. But like even that, like I didn't practice after a certain amount of time. I didn't practice guitar more. I just was like, well, I'm pretty much plateaued at like where I feel like I'm at with guitar, and that if to be any better would take a lot more time and commitment.
Yeah, it became frustrating as I got into heavy music, and I'm like, the things I hear in my head, I cannot play because I hurt my skills. And then I discovered reverb, and I was like, oh, I can make ambient music.
Yes,
with my limited.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a totally normal trajectory. I really I like guitar a lot still, and I have another project where I just play guitar, but in Amulets, like to be able to fuse like guitar playing and looping with the tape loops and stuff is that's been my goal for a long time. And like, how do I do both?
Yeah. One of the things I think people don't realize is like whether it's noise rock or harsh noise or ambient, like it's not as easy as like people would think it is. Like there's so much skill and craft to it where I'm like, I have friends who make harsh noise and I'm like, I can't do that because I want everything on a click these days. And so,
I mean, I think there's a lot of like a nuance in those things. And like, I think a lot of people will, like you said, like blanket statement, oh, I could do that. That's so easy. Oh, you're just doing this. And it's very reductive to be like, oh, it's just this. In the same way you would see like an abstract painting and you're like, oh, I could do that. It's so easy. You just do this. And you're like, throw it up on the wall and it's fine. Or like you just hold out a note and like, that's easy. You're like, but, those are the people who are not making good stuff. They're making, like whatever, they say they think they can do and everything's so easy. I'm like, I don't really appreciate those kind of statements where the people are just like, yeah, it's so easy. Like it may sound easy to you, but it's not, especially if you are taking it very seriously. It's not easy. It's still a skill and a craft and an art form that you're like trying to do.
Yeah. At what point did kind of experimentation come along and your interest in tape loops and kind of crafting outside of just playing?
Yeah, I remember, I mean, I guess I've been in bands and I've had like side projects and like recording projects and stuff. And I remember watching a YouTube video about Alessandro Cortini of Nine Inch Nails, and he was using a 4-track tape recorder like as an instrument, and he was playing all these drones on it. And I was, fascinated by it. And I got a 4-track and I started experimenting with that. And I was looking up tape loop stuff because I'd heard about it, but I never really like made one or anything. So I got that and I made one of those, and I was experimenting with that and the 4-track. And then, I just kind of was experimenting and diving into this world of like, what would it be to be like experimental ambient music, whatever this is like. And then I started introducing guitar to it and looping that. And I think that's when everything like gelled. And I was like, okay, now I'm performing with an instrument that I both don't know and know, and like fusing the two and like trying to like find some kind of like sound that I was looking for. Yeah.
It's funny. The first Amulets album, at least on Bandcamp, is recorded on a sick day from bed. Like, how was that process of like creation that first album? And
that one, it's funny because like the project itself started as like a kind of like a witch house joke project, and I was trying to do like this dark electronic thing, and the joke was funny because like I was like, well, my friend also was like, I made a joke harsh noise album. And then he got really into it, and then I got really into what I was doing, and these jokes are not jokes anymore because we're like, actually, when you're like, oh, I could do that, and then you do it, and then you're like, wait, this is actually hard and interesting, and I want to explore this more. That's when I think when I made that first thing, like, I was still like figuring out what this was, and what started off as like a kind of like, like gag, it was like, okay, now I'm now I've named this thing, and now I'm exploring more music with it, and it became this channel for experimentation of like, well, I don't know, it's like it's nothing too serious.
Yeah.
Until I take it seriously, until I, find the things that I'm looking for in it and like want to explore more. And that's when I think that's when the tape looping started, and I started merging all of it. And I was like, okay, well, I want to move away from this kind of like witch housey electronic thing, and I want to make it more dark ambient. And then how do I navigate this kind of new thing? So
yeah. Was there any sort of specific meaning or inspiration for the band name?
No. My friend and I had like I was really into circuit bending in college, and I was like making lots of weird noises, and we had this like project is like a strong word. Like we played like one show, and we called ourselves Amulet, and we just experimented with these sounds, and it was kind of harsh, noisy, kind of just like weird, and it was just very experimental. And I was experimenting with like tapes and circuit bending and all this other stuff. And after that, like we never played a show again. And then and then I feel like 10 years later, I was like, well, I always liked that name. I'm just gonna make it plural and then slap it on this thing and just like put it out there. And I didn't really think about it too much. Yeah. It was just kind of I'm like, oh, I like that. It's catchy. It feels like the continuation of the heart of experimentation that we were doing. So let's just see where this goes.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious about the creative process and kind of the evolution. Like you're blending guitar and tape loops, and I'm sure a whole bunch of other things. Like when you sit down, where do you kind of start? What is your starting point, and how do you know, like, okay, this is a direction I want to follow, and this is a good thing, and it's done. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's hard because I think they all start in different spots, and some of it, sometimes it starts like there's a field recording on my phone or like a weird sound, and I'm like, okay, I want to start the song off with this sound, or I want to take this sound and sample it to tape and just play it back on a tape loop and see how it sounds, or slow it down, process it through a lot of effects and pedals and stuff, and then just see.
Yeah.
Sometimes it starts off with just like noodling on guitar, looping some stuff and creating some kind of like paddy atmosphere, and be like, okay, I kind of like this vibe. Let me like record this and build off this. And sometimes it's just like, okay, I'm gonna just record like weird synth samples or something to a tape and just start messing around with this tape. And just a lot of it is just bouncing things to tape and then processing the tape through other effects and slowing it down and doing all this other stuff and just seeing how it sounds. Because normally the sounds that I make are like, well, this is okay, but if I recorded it as a tape, it would sound better to me. So
yeah. Has there been a point where you're just like, okay, I feel like I've mastered X, how can I do something different or experiment and change up the whole process to spark different inspiration?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like for me, like the evolution of Amulets is like, based and inspired by a lot of like ambient, droney, post-rock stuff, and then there's like metal elements that I bring in and things that like I listen to and inspired by, but how do I filter that through whatever the Amulets is? Mm-hmm. And I think the evolution of this of like, okay, well, it's not just tape loops anymore. It's not just guitar, but how does that guitar become heavier? And I'm like, oh, I really want bass or distorted bass in this, and like evolving the guitar to sound like a distorted bass through, an octave pedal and stuff. I'm like, okay, that's a new sound that I want to introduce. Yeah. And then having like percussive elements, like how do I layer the tape loops over something that's actually in time and like, to some kind of like actual tempo.
Yeah.
And that's when I started getting into like the digitact and like sampling and sequencing. And so that's being glued with the tapes now and stuff. And so I'm progressing the evolution of using the tape loops, but with other stuff, and just seeing how far I can push that kind of core sound and then evolve it into, more structured songs and more structured parts and stuff.
I'm always curious when it comes to whether it's post-rock or ambient or just instrumental music in general, the process behind album and song titles, whether it is just by feel or if you're ever like, right, this music makes me feel this way and I'm pulling quotes or things to describe that, or if you're like, I want my music to have a message and so I'm naming things as my message.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think the naming, especially in instrumental music, is very important, and it's the only like kind of context clues you have to know what a song is, about. Because like otherwise, like lyrics will tell you like, oh, this is a love song, this is a sad song, whatever. But I like to keep those things like kind of ambiguous and open for interpretation, because I know what I feel when I'm writing them, but like I think having it be more abstract helps the listener create their own narrative of like what they feel or what comes up for them. Like I really love in live shows when people come up to me afterwards and they're like, "Hey, your song made me feel this, and I thought about this." And there's so many different reactions and things that come up for different people that, I think. Like, I don't want to tell people what the song is about or like what they should feel about it. I think it's beautiful whatever people feel when they listen to it.
Yeah. I think my favorite live moments have been ambient or instrumental shows where that just sound washes over you and you could just feel whatever it is. I love going to death metal shows and banging my head off too, but like it's a different emotional vibe, right?
Yeah, they're two like feelings and like on the same spectrum though, right? They're like, okay, like, like whatever, like that feeling that comes out and comes through you, like feeling music, like both like very beautiful and very heavy. It's like, it's still like a deep, emotional resonance for sure.
Yeah. How has it been translating that studio into the live setting?
It's been fun. It's been an interesting challenge over the years, but I really like the challenge. I like the engineering part of it. I like creating my own setup of like, how do I, for a long time I was like, okay, this is my setup live and I'm going to play all these songs live and record them live. And now I'm kind of like multi-tracking songs and do it. Now I'm deconstructing my songs into how do I play them live with my current setup. And that's really fun to like reverse engineer my own songs. I'm like, okay, what would a live version of this sound like? What parts am I playing? What parts is a tape loop? What parts is a sequence? What am I doing throughout the whole song to like make sure everything keeps going? And that's part of like the really fun part for me is like building it so it's all it's all manageable, but it's all like kind of chaotic too, where I'm like, okay, I have to go start this loop. I have to start this sequence. I have to start this guitar loop, bounce back to the tape, change that tape, hit the other sequence, go back to the guitar. And I really love like that, like one man band chaos of like just feeling like I'm doing a lot when I know like I could just easily, I could have just done it on a computer and just
hit play.
I could have done it so much easier, but I make it so much more complicated.
Yeah. It makes each live performance its own unique piece of history and moment in time.
Absolutely, and I want to build in the like chance elements in those songs too. Like, okay, if like I'm feeling this part, I can ride it out a little bit longer.
Yeah,
I can switch it to the next part. Like I'm in control of it, and like each time is a little bit different. So it's like half prepared and like half like improvised and like not knowing exactly where it's going to go.
Yeah,
but yeah,
Just trying not to fuck up the loop.
Exactly. It really comes down to like not fucking up the loop, which is, now that like I'm using more like click stuff or like tempo based stuff, I have some MIDI stuff going on now too, and like that's been really awesome. But I have like a MIDI looper, and I have to like make sure the MIDI is looping on time and the clock is sending, and like there's a new element of stuff that's like so it's fun. I'd like to keep the challenge alive.
This new EP is called Reminder, some variation on that, some play on that, right?
Yes. It's both. Like, I wanted. I like the wordplay of titles too, and like I thought that this EP was like constructed from a lot of like fragments of old songs, pieces of recordings, like things that I like really want to do something with. I never finished these ideas, and I started seeing if I could glue them together and see what I could like kind of make from, I could kind of like collage together. And so the remainders part is part of that. And then, it's like these artifacts and these reminders of like other parts and places you've been in. Oh, I recorded this here, and I recorded this part here, and like, oh, this was from that thing. Like, and I just love the interplay of how close those words were and remainders and reminders. And so I was just like, okay, this is like, I feel like the loose theme of this. And I just kind of explored that.
Nice. Who came up with the concept for the artwork for this album?
It's funny. I had a dream about a kind of quadrant-y like album art, and my friend Eric, he's also my bandmate, and Jenny Hanver, he helps me with all my graphic design stuff, and he's a super talented designer. And he was like, I want to take a stab at this album art. I have an idea. And he came back with this kind of like collaged quadrant idea. And I'm like, that is so wild. Like, I had a dream about that. And like, I wrote it down and I showed it to him. He's like, whoa, that's wild that like we're on the same level somehow. Like, and like the way he pieced it together was all this like found, scanned, like old artifacts and magazines and other things that he like put together. And I'm like, this is perfect. This is exactly how this was constructed too. Like, I think this is all like really fitting. And so it was all kind of like serendipitous. It all just worked out.
Nice. This album's coming out on Pelagic. How'd you get connected with the label?
I have been a fan for a little bit, and I have friends, New Miserable Experience and Glassing on their label, and I just was talking to them, and I talked to Dave Grossman of New Miserable Experience, and he was like, yeah, like, like, he's a big fan of you. And like, oh, well, I'm a fan. Like, well, I can connect you to. I'm like, okay, let's talk.
Make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So it just worked out. Yeah.
Nice. Album is out tomorrow. That's cool. What's the plan for after this album come out? Are you going to try to play some shows in Portland, or?
Yeah, I think I have an upcoming Midwest tour with Midwife, and I'll have the album out, and I'll probably try to play a song if I can get my shit together.
Yeah.
If not, I'll have it to sell. So, but yeah, I will. I'll probably try to like, play a song off of it, and
nice.
and tour it a little bit.
Yeah. What's kind of the touring, I don't know, scene, that a vibe for ambient music right now?
I feel,
For
I
your
mean,
experience.
yeah, I feel like, I know a lot of like people within the community and scene and stuff. And I think it's very much alive. And, but I think just like anything else, like a lot of bands it's just hard to tour.
Yeah.
And so it's both like thriving and difficult and not, so there's a lot of like talented people who should be touring more, but also ambient music is a little trickier to tour too. Like you have to have the right venues, you have to have the right, opening slots or like, places to play and audience and stuff. And, it's just a lot different than a rock band.
Yeah.
But, I've been fortunate enough to be placed in front of lots of weird bands and metal bands and random, like just different acts. And I somehow both fit and don't fit at the same time. So it's been really fun for me to just like experiment with that and see how I'm received when I play and open for these kinds of shows. So.
Nice. Yeah. Anytime I play live, I'm like, this is awesome. I should do it more. But booking shows is a pain in the ass.
Yes, it is. It is a huge pain, and it's I think just becoming more difficult. Like as more venues shut down, as like even just like touring, being a touring band now, and like gas prices, and you're like that's hard. Like and that's just one factor. Like so, yeah.